Welcome back to the deep dive. We have a really fascinating stack of notes to get through today. We are looking at a book that, on the surface, looked like a simple romance, maybe even, a midlife crisis novel.
Right.
But when you actually peel back the layers, it is something much darker and I think much more profound. We're talking about Haruki Murakami's South of the Border, West of the Sun.
It is a deceptively simple book. You don't have the usual Murakami tropes here. There are no talking cats, no two moons in the sky, none of that. No alternate dimensions in the sci-fi sense. But I would argue it's one of his most haunting works because it deals with a ghost that is very real for all of us, the ghost of the past.
Right. It's not a ghost story, but it's entirely about being haunted.
Ah.
The sources we're looking at today frame this deep dive as a case study on memory, on the what-ifs that plague us, and specifically the destructive power of a childhood bond. It's about how a relationship formed at age 12 can basically dismantle a man's life 30 years later.
Yeah, it raises a terrifying question. Can you ever really be free of the person who defined your beginning? Or are we just, building our adult lives on top of a foundation that was set in cement when we were children?
So let's jump right into it. Let's meet our protagonist. His name is Hajime. And right off the bat, we have to talk about names because Hajime isn't just a random choice.
No, it's very, very specific. Hajime means beginning in Japanese. And the book makes a huge deal out of his birthday, January 4th, 1951. Now, for a modern reader, that might just look like a date. But in the context of the source material, it is loaded with historical weight.
Break that down for us. Why is that specific week so important?
Well, look at the math. It's the first week of the first month of the first year of the second half of the 20th century. Hajime represents the generation born immediately after the ruin. His parents' generation saw the war. They saw the firebombing of Tokyo, the starvation, the absolute collapse of society. But Hajime, he is born into the Reconstruction.
So he's supposed to be this fresh start, a blank slate for a new Japan.
Exactly. He inherits a recovering world, not a broken one. He grows up in a suburbia that is desperately trying to pretend that the war never happened. Everything is about moving forward, about normalcy. But the irony, and this is the core of his character, is that despite being the beginning, despite being the symbol of hope, Hajime feels fundamentally defective.
This brings us to the only child aspect.
Mhm.
I was honestly surprised by how intense the sources were on this topic. I think today, being an only child is pretty common. But in Hajime's world, it was treated almost like a medical condition.
It was a stigma, a huge one. You have to understand the demographics. The standard family in that era had 2, 3, maybe 4 kids. To be an only child was a statistical anomaly. And because Japanese society at the time